There is a prayer that most people have prayed so many times they have stopped counting. It does not always use those exact words. Sometimes it sounds like, "When is this going to change?" Sometimes it sounds like, "How much longer do I have to do this?" Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all, just a long exhale into a quiet room after another day passed without the thing you have been waiting for finally arriving. But underneath every version of it is the same question, the same ache, the same mixture of faith and frustration that is so deeply human it almost defies explanation. God, why is it taking so long? If you have asked that question, if you are asking it right now, I want you to know that you are not in bad company. You are not faithless for asking it. You are not impatient in a way that disqualifies you from what you are waiting for. You are a person who believed something, who held on to it, who kept showing up for a process that has not yet produced the outcome you were promised. And the honest, unfiltered question of how much longer is not a lack of trust. It is the sound of a real human being carrying a real weight for a real amount of time. So let us talk about it, not around it, not over it with enough theological language to make the ache feel smaller than it is. Let us sit down inside the question and actually look at what is there. I want to start with something that almost never gets said in conversations about waiting. Waiting is not passive. We treat it like it is. We talk about it as if waiting is the absence of activity, the space between the doing of things, the holding pattern you circle in while the real action happens somewhere else. But that is not what waiting actually is when you are in the middle of it, when you are genuinely waiting for something that matters, something that your entire life seems to be orienting itself around, something you have prayed for and believed for and built your hope on. Waiting is one of the most active, demanding, costly things a human being can do. It requires you to keep believing something you cannot yet see, every single day. Not once, not in a single dramatic act of faith, but over and over and over again in the ordinary moments of ordinary days that do not look like they are leading anywhere in particular. It requires you to keep your hands open when every instinct in you wants to grab and force and manufacture. It requires you to stay present in a life that feels like it is on hold, while everyone else seems to be moving forward. It requires you to keep choosing the direction of trust when the evidence for it has gone quiet and the evidence against it is loudly accumulating. That is not nothing. That is enormous. And the fact that it does not look like productivity from the outside does not mean it is not costing you something real. It is costing you something real. And the first thing I want to do today is honor that cost before we do anything else. Let me name the particular pain of a long wait, because it is layered in a way that is hard to untangle. There is the obvious pain, the thing you want that is not here yet, the prayer that is still unanswered, the door that is still closed, the relationship, the healing, the provision, the opportunity, the clarity that has not arrived despite your faithfulness and your asking and your believing. That pain is real, and it deserves to be named without being immediately resolved or reframed. But underneath that obvious pain, there is usually something else. Something quieter and in many ways more corrosive. The secondary pain of what the waiting has started to do to your belief. Because here is what a long wait does that a short wait does not. A short wait is inconvenient. A long wait starts to ask questions. It starts to produce doubt, not just about whether the specific thing is coming, but about whether you heard right in the first place. About whether the promise was real or imagined, about whether the faith you have been exercising is pointed at something true, or whether you have been holding on to a story you told yourself because you needed it to be true. That kind of doubt is a different animal. It is not the clean, abstract, intellectual kind that can be addressed with good theology and a strong argument. It is the lived, accumulated, experiential kind that comes from being in the waiting long enough that your hope has started to wear thin in places. And that kind of doubt deserves more than a verse and an encouragement. It deserves honesty. It deserves space. It deserves someone willing to sit in it with you without rushing to get you back to a more comfortable place. I want to talk about what we do with our hands while we wait, because it reveals something important. Most of us, when we have been waiting for a long time without visible progress, eventually arrive at one of a few responses. And each of them is understandable. And each of them, in its own way, has a cost. The first response is striving, deciding that the reason it is taking so long is because you are not doing enough. that the waiting could be shortened if you prayed harder, fasted longer, worked more, positioned yourself better, eliminated whatever you imagined to be the obstacle. The striving response turns the waiting into a performance review. It says, if I can just get my part right, the delay will end. And it keeps you furiously busy and quietly desperate and no closer to the thing because the delay is not actually about your performance. The second response is shutting down, deciding, usually not consciously, that the safest way to survive a long wait is to stop wanting the thing as much, to lower the temperature of your hope so that the disappointment of another day without it does not burn as hot, to keep functioning, keep believing in a general sense, keep going through the motions of faith, but to quietly put the specific hope in a drawer where it cannot hurt you as much. This feels like self-protection. It is, but the cost of it is a kind of slow grief, a quiet distance from the thing that was once alive in you that gradually becomes harder and harder to close. The third response is bargaining, starting to make deals, consciously or not, about what you will change or sacrifice or release in exchange for the waiting ending. Negotiating with God as if the delay is a consequence and the solution is to identify the right thing to offer up. This response keeps you in a transactional relationship with the waiting and with the one you are waiting on, and it misunderstands the nature of both. None of these responses are wrong exactly. They are all deeply human, but none of them actually address what a long wait is asking of you at the deepest level. And that thing, the thing that a long wait is actually asking, is what I want to spend some real time with. Here is the question underneath the question. When you ask God why it is taking so long, what you are often really asking is, does this mean what I think it means about me? Because waiting, when it goes long enough, stops being only about the thing you are waiting for and starts being about your interpretation of the waiting itself. And the interpretation that most people land on, somewhere in the quiet hours when they are most honest with themselves, is a personal one. The waiting means I am not enough. The waiting means I did something wrong. The waiting means I am not as favored, as chosen, as close as I thought I was. The waiting means that the version of me I hoped was true, the one who was trusted with something significant, the one who was being led somewhere meaningful, is actually just a story I made up about myself. And that is the place where the waiting does its most devastating work, not in the delay itself. In the story, the delay starts to generate about who you are. I want to name that story directly because once it is named, it becomes easier to examine. The length of your wait is not a measure of your worth. It is not a verdict on your value. It is not God's assessment of how much you deserve the thing you are asking for. Those connections feel real. They are emotionally logical. They are the natural conclusion a human mind draws when it is trying to make meaning out of something it does not understand. But they are not accurate. And building your identity on them is building on something that will not hold. Let me talk about the relationship between timing and preparation, because I think it is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in the experience of waiting. We tend to assume that we are ready for the thing we are waiting for, that the reason it has not arrived yet is external. The circumstances have not aligned, the doors have not opened, the other people involved have not moved. And sometimes that is true. But often, more often than we are comfortable admitting, part of what the waiting is doing is preparation. Internal preparation. The kind that cannot be rushed without consequence. Think about what it would mean if the thing you are waiting for arrived right now, today, exactly as you have been picturing it. Think honestly about whether the version of you that exists in this moment is fully ready to hold it. Not capable. You are capable of many things. But ready. Ready at the level of character, of emotional health, of healed relationships, of cleared out internal space that the new thing needs in order to actually take root and flourish. Because some of what we are asking for is enormous. Not just logistically enormous, but personally enormous. It would change everything. The relationships, the identity, the daily reality, the demands placed on you, the visibility you carry, the responsibility you hold. And arriving in that kind of everything changes moment as the current version of yourself, with the current wounds still open, the current fears still driving, the current unresolved things still in the way, might not actually produce what you are imagining. The waiting is not punishment. In many cases, the waiting is protection. From arriving somewhere before you are able to sustain what you find there, from getting the answer before you're equipped to steward it, from the version of the thing that would have been yours 2 years ago, which would have looked like the answer and would have eventually revealed itself as something you were not yet ready for. I know that is not satisfying. I know it does not immediately resolve the ache, but sit with it, because there is a difference between God withholding something from you and God protecting something for you. And sometimes the only way to tell the difference is from the other side of the waiting. There is something I want to say to the person who has been waiting for a very specific thing for a very long time. Not a vague hope, a specific one, a specific person, a specific healing, a specific door, a specific word that has not come. Something you can name, something you have prayed for with actual words, something that you have brought to God so many times that the prayer itself has started to feel worn, like a path in the grass from too many footsteps. I want to say to you that the specificity of what you are waiting for matters. It is not a liability. The fact that you know exactly what you are asking for, that you have not made the prayer vague enough to be technically answered by anything, is not a lack of surrender. It is honesty. It is bringing the real request instead of the edited one. And that kind of honest, specific, persistent asking is not the same as demanding. It is one of the more courageous forms of faith, because it would be much easier, after a long wait, to start widening the prayer, to make it broad enough that almost anything counts, to tell yourself you are being flexible when really you are protecting yourself from the specific disappointment of the specific thing not coming, keeping the prayer specific, keeping the hope honest, keeping the ask real even after years of silence. That takes something. And it is not being honored the way it should be in most conversations about faith and waiting. You are not wrong for wanting what you want. You are not faithless for still wanting it after all this time. The desire itself is not the problem. It is, in many cases, part of the promise. I want to talk about comparison in the context of waiting, because it is one of the most reliable ways to turn a hard season into an unbearable one. When you are in a long wait, almost nothing is more disorienting than watching other people receive versions of the thing you have been asking for. Someone who has been praying for less time. Someone who, from where you stand, does not seem to have paid the kind of price you have paid. Someone whose timing makes no sense to you given your own timeline. And the question that arrives with that observation is one of the most dangerous ones available. Why them and not me? That question, allowed to stay and grow, becomes a corrosive thing. Not because asking it is wrong. The asking is human and honest and completely understandable. But the story it tends to generate, the story that someone else's timing proves something about your value, your standing, your favor, the fairness of the whole arrangement. That story will do more damage to your faith than almost anything the waiting itself can do. Other people's timelines are not a commentary on yours. Their open doors are not evidence that your doors are closed because of something wrong with you. Their answered prayers are not proof that yours are going unanswered because you are less worthy of the answer. We are not in competition for a limited supply of good things, and someone else receiving what they asked for does not diminish the supply of what is available to you. What it does do is reveal something, not something wrong with you, something about what you are believing. And if watching someone else's breakthrough destabilizes your faith in your own, that is worth examining, not with shame, with curiosity. Because underneath the comparison is usually a belief that the good things are distributed based on merit, and that belief, however logical it feels, is not actually how any of this works. Let me talk about what to do in the waiting that actually helps, because the question of what to do while you wait is one of the most practical and most important questions available. The first thing is this: keep living. This sounds obvious. It is not. Because what a long wait can quietly do, without you fully realizing it, is put the rest of your life on hold. You stop investing fully in the season you are in, because this season does not feel like your real life. Your real life starts when the thing arrives. This is just the waiting room. And so you move through your days at a kind of emotional half speed, present enough to function, but not fully alive to what is actually here. And the damage of that is significant. Not just to your well-being, though that is real, but to the very preparation you are in the middle of. Because the life that is happening right now, in the waiting, is not a placeholder. It is the curriculum. It is where the formation is taking place. It is where the relationships are being built and the character is being developed and the capacity is being grown that the thing you are waiting for is going to require of you. And if you are only half present for it because you are holding out for the next season, you are missing the very preparation that is making the next season possible. The second thing is to tend to what is already in your hands. Because almost everyone who is in a long wait for something they do not yet have is also in possession of something they have not yet fully developed, a gift that is only partially used, a relationship that deserves more investment, an opportunity that is already open that has been receiving only the leftover energy after the waiting for the other thing has taken its share. Tending to what is already in your hands is not settling. It is not giving up on the thing you are waiting for. It is faithfulness. And faithfulness with what you have now is almost always part of how you become ready for what is coming. The third thing is to let the waiting do what it is designed to do without fighting every part of the process. This is the hardest one, because parts of what the waiting produces are uncomfortable: humility, dependence, the stripping away of the version of confidence that was really just inexperience wearing the costume of certainty, the exposure of the things you were relying on to hold you that were not actually strong enough, the surfacing of fear and doubt and unresolved grief that the busy, forward-moving seasons kept successfully buried. These things coming up is not the waiting going wrong. It is the waiting going right. And the more you resist that process, the longer it takes. Not as a punishment, because the process is not complete until the work is done. And you cannot rush the work by refusing to let it happen. I want to speak to the exhaustion specifically, because exhaustion is a real part of a long wait, and it deserves more than a reminder to stay strong. There is a particular kind of tired that comes from maintaining hope over a long period of time, from choosing, day after day, to keep the possibility alive in you, from doing the emotional work of not collapsing into cynicism while also not pretending everything is fine, from holding the tension between what you believe is coming and what you can actually see right now. That is exhausting work. And it is largely invisible work. No one sees it. No one applauds it. No one marks the day you decided, again, to keep believing. And the exhaustion of that eventually produces a temptation that most people in a long wait will encounter at some point. The temptation to just let go. Not dramatically, not as a crisis of faith, but quietly. To just release the expectation. To stop the active work of hoping and let things become whatever they are going to become without your participation, to rest from the effort of believing. And I want to be careful here because rest from striving is different from releasing hope. Rest from performance, from managing the process, from white-knuckling through the believing. That is not only okay, it is often necessary. But releasing hope entirely because the exhaustion has become too much, that is something different. That is the waiting winning in a way that is not in your interest. What the exhaustion actually needs is not the release of the hope. It needs permission to be named, permission to be real, permission to exist in your conversation with God without being immediately dressed up in language that makes it sound more composed than it is. Lord, I am tired. I do not know how much longer I can do this. I need something. Even that is a form of faith because you are still in the conversation. You are still bringing it to the right place. You have not walked away. There is something about the end of a long wait that most people do not anticipate. And I want to name it so that when it comes, it does not catch you off guard. The end of a long wait is often quieter than you pictured. We build the moment of arrival up over years of waiting. The answer, when it finally comes, is supposed to feel a certain way. Dramatic, unmistakable, proportional to the length and difficulty of the wait. We expect the arrival to announce itself in a way that matches the significance of what we have been carrying, but often it does not. Often the answer comes in a form that is smaller than the fanfare you imagined, or different in shape than the version you waited for, or mixed with complications you did not picture, or so gradual that you almost missed the moment when the waiting became receiving. And that can produce a disorienting kind of grief. A grief that is hard to justify because you got the thing you were waiting for. But the version of it that arrived did not feel the way you thought it would feel. The relief you expected was mixed with adjustment and new challenges and a kind of complex emotion that does not have a clean name. I want to tell you that if that is what your arrival looks like, it does not mean the answer was not real. It does not mean you got the wrong thing, or it is going to fall apart, or the wait was not worth it. It means the arrival is a human experience, complex and imperfect, like all human experiences. And the thing you receive is going to grow into itself over time. It is not going to arrive fully formed, and learning to receive an imperfect version of the thing you have been waiting for without rejecting it because it does not look exactly like the picture. That is one of the final lessons of a long wait. I want to address something that runs underneath a lot of long waits and almost never gets named directly. Control. The deepest discomfort of waiting is not actually the absence of the thing. It is the absence of control over when the thing arrives. If you could know the date, if there were a calendar entry that said on this day, the thing happens, the waiting would be completely different. Difficult maybe, but navigable. Because you would have the information. You would be able to orient yourself. You would be able to see the end from the middle. But waiting does not give you that. Waiting requires you to move through time without the information you would need to feel in control of the process. And for most people who are high-functioning, capable, resourceful human beings, that lack of control is one of the hardest things to sit with. It bumps against the belief, held often below the level of conscious awareness, that your job is to figure things out, to solve the problem, to identify the right action that produces the desired outcome. And waiting says, not this time. This time, the timeline is not yours to determine. The process is not yours to manage. The outcome is not yours to manufacture. And all of that capacity you have been using to navigate your life, it is not what is needed here. What is needed here is something that does not come naturally to capable people. Trust, not confident trust, not certain trust. Uncertain, uncomfortable, sometimes barely hanging on trust. The kind where you genuinely do not know how this is going to resolve and you have decided, for today at least, to stay anyway. That is the actual work of a long wait, not the work of doing, the work of releasing the doing and staying present with what you cannot control. And it is some of the hardest work there is. Let me speak to the people around you who do not understand why this is still taking so long. Because one of the additional weights of a long wait is often the social weight. The people who were supportive at the beginning, who have moved on. The ones who stopped asking because they did not know what to say. The ones who offer advice that is really just a version of have you tried not wanting it so much. The ones who are clearly uncomfortable with the fact that your situation has not resolved, as if the unresolved nature of your wait is somehow an indictment of their faith or their prayers on your behalf. And sometimes the hardest ones are not the people who are unsupportive. The hardest ones are the people who are relentlessly positive in a way that has stopped feeling like support and started feeling like pressure, who cannot sit with you in the wait without immediately trying to redirect you toward hope, who respond to your honest expression of tiredness with reminders that God is faithful, as if you somehow forgot, as if that is what you needed in that moment. What you actually need in those moments is not redirection. It is presence. Someone who can be with you in the hard part without rushing you to the other side of it. Someone who can say, I know this is long, and I know it is hard, and I am not going anywhere while it is still unresolved. If you do not have many people in your life who can do that, I want you to be gentle with yourself about the loneliness of that. And I want to encourage you to look for even one person who has the capacity to sit in uncertainty with you. Because carrying a long wait alone is one of the heaviest versions of carrying it. As we come toward the close of this conversation, I want to say something about the other side of this, the version of you that is going to exist when the waiting is finally over. That version of you is going to be different in ways you cannot fully predict from here. Not just relieved, not just grateful, different in the way that only a long, costly, clarifying wait makes a person different. More patient in a way that is not theoretical, but earned, more compassionate toward other people in their waiting because you know from the inside what it costs. More settled in something that cannot be shaken by circumstances because it was built in a season when the circumstances gave you almost nothing to stand on. That version of you, the one being built right now, in the waiting you are in, is not a consolation prize for the delay. It is something of real and lasting value. The formation that is happening in the waiting is not incidental to the story you are living. It is a central part of it, one of the most central parts. And when the waiting ends and the thing arrives and you look back from the other side of it, you will see something in this season that you cannot fully see from the middle. You will see the shape of what this made in you. And it will matter. It will have been worth the cost. I cannot tell you when your waiting ends. I do not have access to that information and I would not claim to. But I can tell you this. The waiting has not been wasted. Not a day of it. Not the hardest days, not the quietest days, not the days you almost walked away and did not. Every single day of this has been doing something in you that is permanent. Here is what I want to leave with you today. The question, God, why is it taking so long, is not a faithless question. It is one of the most honest prayers available to a person in a long season of waiting. And honest prayers, even the ones that sound like complaints, even the ones that carry frustration and exhaustion and barely contained grief, those prayers land. They are received. They are not held against you. The waiting you are in is not evidence that you are forgotten. It is not evidence that the promise was false, or the hearing was wrong, or the faith was misplaced. It is evidence that you are in the middle of something real. And real things take real time. And the time is not arbitrary, even when it feels completely arbitrary. Stay in the conversation. Keep bringing the real version of what you are carrying, not the edited version, not the version that sounds more composed than it is. Bring the tiredness and the doubt and the grief and the specific ache of the specific thing you are still waiting for. Bring all of it, because the conversation that holds all of that, the one where you are fully honest about where you are, is the one where something real happens. Not always the arrival of the thing, but often something better in the short term. The arrival of the kind of peace that does not make sense given the circumstances. The arrival of enough strength for the next step, even when you cannot see the step after that. The arrival of the sense, quiet and impossible to explain, that you are not in this alone. That is what I want for you. Not the bypass of the waiting, the company inside it. You have been faithful with a long and heavy thing. That faithfulness is real. It counts. And the story you are in is not finished. The chapter you're in right now is not the last one. And the page is still turning. Keep going. Keep asking. Keep bringing it. You are closer than it feels.